Last week's episode of In Bob We Trust was a more than a little depressing interlude about how difficult it can be to square enjoying undeniably entertaining and often high-quality mass-market pop culture with the equally undeniable knowledge that the entities and systems producing said pop culture are often bad. Let's just cut to the shorthand, using the example of the Walt Disney Corporation, an unfathomably massive multinational economic leviathan whose frankly terrifying degree of global influence is occasionally difficult to recognize because their initial and still most successful venture was to effectively become the majority shareholder in the abstract concept of childhood itself, and who are currently in the midst of a year-long celebration of the 10th anniversary of their subsidiary, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, aka, hey world, we now own your extended adolescence as well. I'm always a little bit apprehensive about buzzkill episodes about things lots of people enjoy because, well, the world kinda sucks. Life is hard, and the desire to simply enjoy what tiny slivers of happiness one can rescue from the great 21st century garbage fire is not only understandable, it's extremely reasonable. And as much as I think grappling with the uncomfortable parts of our cultural artifacts is necessary and enriching as an experience, I've never been one of these people who gets off on spoiling things for people. I hate seeing the look on people's faces when they first grasp that some dark or regressive subtext about their favorite movie exists, or learn that some artist, author, or creator whose work meant a lot to them turns out to have been not a great person. Now, don't misunderstand, I sincerely believe that losing one's illusions about what we're inclined to be uncritical of is beneficial, necessary, and healthy, but I also know that I sincerely miss almost every illusion I've ever had to lose, and I absolutely know that I'll be chasing replacements for those feelings probably until my dying day. In any case, I felt even more like a party pooper than usual in this case because Disney and Marvel are currently central to the enormous pop cultural moment that is the impending release of Black Panther, a film derived from a property most of the world had never even heard of prior to Captain America Civil War that has, without even been released yet, transformed months in advance by the zeitgeist into a full-blown event in popular culture and American black popular culture in particular. The first black-led superhero film of the Marvel era, a black director leading an overwhelmingly black cast of characters through a story set largely in and around a hypothetical, ultra-advanced African nation untouched by colonialism for the first big-budget Hollywood blockbuster to embrace the Afro-futurist aesthetic, it's not hard to understand how and why the at first largely audience-driven build-up for the feature has at this point become something like a cross between the first airing of Roots and the release of the original Star Wars. Yes, basically every Marvel movie is expected to open big, but none of the others had this many reports, or as far in advance, of church congregations, youth groups, and even whole families block-booking theaters just to make sure they can see it, or throngs of attendees showing up to the premieres in either authentic and or Wakandan-inspired African-style fashions as a statement, or multiple huge social media-driven charitable campaigns raising money for the express purpose of, among other adjacent things, taking disadvantaged youth on field trips to see it. And most superhero movies, period, do not get cover stories in Time magazine by Jamil Smith, which calls the film a milestone and includes the following passage. In the midst of a regressive cultural and political moment, fueled in part by the white nativist movement, the very existence of Black Panther feels like resistance. Its themes challenge institutional bias, its characters take unsubtle digs at oppressors, and its narrative includes prismatic perspectives on black life and tradition.
Move, or you will be moved.
Wow. Smith's piece goes on to point out, back when the film was announced in 2014, no one knew that it would be released into the fraught climate of President Trump's America, where a thriving black future seems more difficult to see. And then asks, what does it mean to see this film, a vision of unmitigated black excellence, at a moment when the Commander-in-Chief reportedly in a recent meeting dismissed the 54 nations of Africa as shithole countries?
As entertaining as that would be.
So yeah, that would be the buzz I felt a little bit bad about, however indirectly injecting cynicism into. And also, I didn't want to be taken for being part of the weird backlash that's already started up against the movie, or rather against people being hyped up for it, not simply the expected gang of asshole irony bigots who can't wait to pretend to be outraged that they'd never make a movie called White Panther. Just wait till they found out that there were like 5 white tigers, but they were 3 Puerto Ricans, an East Indian, and a black Jewish guy.
Race war!
But also, there's been some more substantive criticism of the Black Panther hype machine as well that's a little harder to dismiss, in as much as it sounds like stuff that you shouldn't dismiss. Squeezed in among the anticipatory rapture from fans and put on ironic but not really racism from troublemakers are some actual legitimate questions about the unintended consequences of attaching this level of broader socio-cultural meaning to a piece of mass-market for-profit entertainment. Like, for example, yes, there's no question that the first black-led Marvel movie is a big deal. No, it's not the first black-led superhero movie or the first black-directed superhero movie.
Meteor Man's in town!
Slap me around and call me Susan.
Oh snap, you Luke.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
But like it or not, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies are the biggest and most successful run that the genre has ever had, and as far as global pop culture is concerned, they represent the superhero gold standard right now. So if nothing else, Black Panther represents the concept of black superheroes getting effectively called up to the major leagues. If If the MCU is the majors, is the DC Extended Universe like the XFL?
I'm sure everyone has a lot of questions for me, but...
However, significant as that is, it's still a movie, a fictional blockbuster movie for which whatever positive message or presence it might embody is inevitably secondary to its function at moving a new set of Marvel merchandise and keeping the bigger Marvel machine running strong at the box office. Given that, is there something even just a little bit, well, questionable, if not outright gauche, about letting a for-profit corporate product become the centerpiece for a cultural moment? Is there a level of moral and or cognitive dissonance involved in letting what amounts to let's all give the Walt Disney Corporation a projected $160 million or over opening weekend to be presented as one of, if not the major celebratory events marking Black History Month in 2018, at least as far as the media is concerned? Now, I've seen other very reasonable sounding questions crop up on the same lines as well. Is it less than helpful to turn the concept of Wakanda into a shorthand for cultural pride when it's a fictional utopian fantasy setting, while so little is already taught about actual African history in US education to begin with? What does it say that you can raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to take kids to a movie but not, say, a culturally relevant museum or monument to a real person or event? Is it good in the long term for prominent cultural voices to be co-signing the idea that this character, a licensed intellectual property of a giant multinational corporation, as a kind of authentic Black American cultural icon now? Hell, is the entire notion of a culturally relevant blockbuster itself innately antithetical to the revolutionary anti-establishment origins of the civil rights movement itself? Is this not something like Disney and Marvel essentially attempting to create a mass marketable subset of Black pride symbology that they can own the rights to and forever be associated with?
Make way for the hero in you. Black Panther Vibranium Hero Gear, each sold separately. Be Marvel, be more.
In much the same way Coca-Cola affixed itself permanently into the narrative of the peace and free love movements in the early 70s through I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing. Yeah, they didn't just make that up for Mad Men, that shit happened. Remember, Disney is Disney because they play the long game. It's not just about you wanting to see the movie this weekend, it's about your grandchildren wanting to go on the ride 50 years from now. So don't think the prospect of seeing quotes and catchphrases from Black Panther showing up on t-shirts and banners at serious newsworthy protest marches or becoming an evergreen popular theme for school kids' February art projects serving as consumer-generated free advertising for years into the future hasn't crossed their minds. That kind of thing isn't without precedent either. Speaking of Coca-Cola, you do know one of the main reasons that if you grew up in the United States, this is what you think Santa Claus looks like is because Coke decided he did, right?
Experience luxury performance that takes the crown. Presenting the all-new Lexus LS 500. Long live the king.
Those are all interesting and challenging questions, and I'm sure they'll have equally compelling answers. They just won't be answers coming from me, because I don't think I've got any business trying to tell Black moviegoers what the correct way to approach a Black film that's become something like a cultural touchstone of the moment. It's pretty far outside my jurisdiction in about 12 different ways, at least. But what I can speak on, I think, is the more general idea of any piece of mass-market pop culture becoming a political movement symbol, because this has always been a thing that happens and is extremely likely to happen even more frequently now that mass media communication makes the mimetic evolution of these things so immediate and immediately widespread. Case in point, it took well over 30 years of gradual piecemeal appropriation for the swastika to go from an ancient Asian spiritual symbol to the icon of fascism and ultimately Nazism in the Western consciousness. But the same basic thing happened to Pepe the Frog in about 2. The fact is, the entire reason popular culture, that is to say the mass cultivation of a shared pool of collective cultural touchstones that can serve as a universal reference point or rhetorical shorthand within a society, is a thing in the first place is because it expedites and strengthens connections between individuals in terms of how they relate to one another. We seldom have time to learn one another's life stories as a way to find common ground, so the mutual recognition of certain widely known stories, songs, movies, works of art, sayings, poems, etc. can act as a shortcut to a sense of ease and familiarity, one that can even transcend more substantive cultural boundaries up to and including language.
मेरा नाम क्रिश है, मैं नया हूँ. No entiendo. Wookie?
Campbell's new Star Wars soups. Made for...
Yes, the situational irony of illustrating that point through a commercial designed to make you associate heartwarming vibes with the purchase of Campbell's soup and or Star Wars products is quite intentional, as was making this point in the title through a Star Trek The Next Generation reference.
DARMOK and Jalad at Tanagra. DARMOK and Jalad on the ocean.
Calculated to make the subset of my fans who got it feel satisfaction of personal pride and the sense of deeper connection to the series that's also good for my brand loyalty.
I hope I didn't say that out loud just now.
Speaking of which, for those of you who pointed out last week that I covered this topic extensively before as part of the Really That Good Transformers episode, you are correct about that as well. Fearless Girl, on the other hand, actually is a work of Wall Street corporate art. Specifically, it's a paid installation advertising State Street Global Advisor's Gender Diversity Index. This, as you might expect, has led many to decry Fearless Girl as being profoundly cynical, mostly because it is profoundly cynical, seemingly in order to imply a much more radical political stance than it's actually striking. On the other hand, there's been an equally powerful backlash to the backlash, with many folks stepping up to declare that they don't particularly care what Fearless Girl was actually meant to advertise, or that she is an advertisement at all. The symbolism of a powerful young girl standing defiantly, bull or otherwise, is powerful and deeply meaningful to them at this moment in time, and that they oughtn't be shamed for continuing to adopt the symbol as part of their own feminist, progressive, and/or resistance iconography. In any case, to stick with the Disney angle for a moment, one of the best-known modern examples of this phenomenon in the West was Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf, a novelty song popularized through use in the 1933 Walt Disney cartoon version of The Three Little Pigs, being adopted by the popular culture of the time as a resilience anthem about the Great Depression. You can see the present-day version of this phenomenon most visibly on social media, where daily news items and major events are responded to and joked about through memes and images from popular culture under the often correct assumption that a clip from a movie or still of a specific character can communicate an idea to a wider audience faster than 280 characters and/or some emojis can. The president is having a public Twitter meltdown. Here's Kylo Ren being angry at technology to help you express that you think he's being a big whiny baby. A prominent woman did or said something you found inspiring. Game of Thrones has you covered. Don't think the marketing for a new superhero movie looks particularly good? Despondent Affleck will do your morning for you. Feel a little like expressing patriotic sentiment but don't want to play with iconography that's been tainted through long-term co-opting by assholes? Marvel and Disney have a guy for that. Boy, did it turn out they had a guy for that. Black Panther itself has already spawned dozens of such visual signifiers, including I am inspired by this call to action, I or the person I am responding to am extremely confident, and expression of familiarity and unity, and you'd best believe that such things will find their way into the political shorthand because they always inevitably do. The two are linked inextricably. Bill Clinton throttled Bush the First in 1992 in part because he spoke the language of pop culture better. Ronald Reagan borrowed one of his most successful slogans from one of the Dirty Harry movies.
Go ahead, make my day.
I mean, not one of the better Dirty Harry movies, but he did get reelected. The current president is president in large part because he played a competent, successful businessman on a television show and thought it was real. On the flip side, Supergirl named its Season 2 finale after a reference to Senator Elizabeth Warren's headline-making firebrand speech before Congress. The absolutely massive Women's March of 2018 enthusiastically adopted the iconography of the late Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia as an unofficial mascot figure, and someone is already selling this hoodie. But does having consumer product, intellectual property, and brands at the visual media forefront of ostensibly revolutionary causes, well, dilute the revolutionary part? After all, even if you're not necessarily buying your bandana and signage from a Disney store, don't think they haven't thought about that. One way or another, even just the extra attention eventually translates back into profit and capital for whoever makes and/or owns the rights to all this stuff, and more broadly continues to feed the establishment machinery overall, doesn't it? That's all really complicated stuff, no question. So where do I come down on it? I think everyone has to make their own decisions when it comes to what you support and how that support manifests overall. But when it comes to things like this, I think it all has to be about where the organizing begins and ends and the nature of organic uses of pop culture as tools of activism versus the co-opting of activism by pop culture manufacturers. There's a currently popular saying on left-wing social media that goes, "There is no ethical consumption under capitalism." Now, most seem to take this as a condemnation of even attempting to enjoy consumer entertainment comforts in a socially responsible way, which is a valid, if depressing, reading, but I also happen to think it could be more validly taken in the spirit of not letting guilt about consuming the wrong way overcome you, because there isn't a not wrong way to do it in the first place. If one can't in fact make consuming good, then perhaps one can concentrate instead on how you remain good while acting, living, and existing within an innately flawed, unjust, not good system.
When you know nothing matters, the universe is yours, and I've never met a universe that was into it. Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV. Smart people get a chance to climb on top, take reality for a ride, but it'll never stop trying to throw you, and eventually it will. There's no other way off.
And one way to live that just might be to always make sure that you're the one setting the terms. Okay, using Star Wars symbols to make a point about social justice may mean that, to perhaps a negligible degree, your protest march is also serving as free promotion for a big Disney movie, but that only undermines your overriding point if you let it, and doesn't mean you don't get to then tell Pepsi that they can fuck off when they try to sell you Kendall Jenner as a protest icon. And when it comes to Black Panther, from where I sit, most of the movement aspect has played out in the organic fashion. Remember, Disney didn't need this to turn into something like an unofficial February holiday in order to turn a profit with it. It's a Marvel movie. It was going to make a shit ton of money no matter what. The embrace of the film as a political flashpoint, leaning into things like the Black Panther Challenge or the What Black Panther Means to Me hashtag, was not generated initially by studio marketing, but by fans who'd been hoping for the character to get a movie since even before he joined the cinematic universe officially, and audiences who were instantly fascinated by their first glimpse of T'Challa and Wakanda in Civil War. And to the degree that I'm at all comfortable with having an opinion on this matter, period, to me, that's what would make the Black Panther cultural moment moment, at least conceptually, a net positive, even if it's also a blockbuster event movie from an ominous multinational with a bunch of toys to sell.
Experience awe-inspiring performance in the 2018 Lexus LC500.
We all live imperfect lives in an imperfect world, and you don't always get to choose where the things that inspire you come from or who's going to benefit from the exchange of currency and capital that accompanies pretty much everything. But you can, when possible, choose what it is you're inspired to do, what you do with that inspiration, and whether you let it be redirected or co-opted. And if what that means to you at this particular moment is to go out to the theater and get swept up in the potentially inspirational vibe of a big Hollywood movie, even if you have misgivings about it being a big Hollywood movie, well, good for you.
Are you finished?
And since this episode was, once again, a little longer than I'd intended, and I'm kinda at a loss for a good sign-off coda that would fit here better than the one I already wrote for that aforementioned incidentally relevant Transformers show, which you can watch right here if you hadn't seen it before, I'm not gonna feel too bad about reusing it here. Oh, and next week's episode is scheduled for pretty close to my birthday, so do not expect another extra long one of these. Anyway, if you're going to see the movie, I hope you enjoy it if that is in fact your thing, and hard cut to repurpose final thought. Eventually, Time and Tide strips away the authorial intent behind almost any piece of art and gradually supplants it with the meaning conferred by the audience. Yes, even art that was specifically calculated to sell you on a religion, on a country, on an investment firm, or on a truck that transforms into a robot. Hey gang, here's a question that keeps coming up. If your handle is Movie Bob, where are your movie reviews? Well, my old reviews are in a lot of places. You'll find many of them on my YouTube channel, but you'll find the brand new ones on Geek.com, an awesome site that's also your one-stop news source for science, TV, gaming, technology, nerd culture, the works. You can find all my reviews directly by going to geek.com/author/bchipman, because that's my real name, and you can get regular updates on all my reviews and all of Geek.com's other great content by signing up for their kick-ass newsletter at subscribe.geek.com. And don't forget to also subscribe to the Geek.com YouTube channel, where you'll find the videos that accompany my reviews and tons of other great content too. Remember, that's Geek.com, the Geek.com newsletter, and Geek.com on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss out on all the latest Movie Bob reviews. You can also check out my own new website, Movie Bob Central, where you'll find my blog, links to all my work, and shop for my books, ebooks, and future Movie Bob products. And please remember to like these videos, share them with all of your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching another Movie Bob production.